I don't know what's going on here. Sorry, guys, for the delay. I can't seem to see myself, so I'm not even sure if the camera's on. But the timer is going and it says live, so I'm going to presume that you can at least hear me. Um, if you can't see me, my apologies. If you can, then I just can't see myself on my end, and I'll have to figure it out. But thanks anyway so much for those who are watching or just listening if there's no camera. And I'm Dr. Rafich from Vet Triage. It is July 7th, 9:52 a.m. So we're going to talk about when should your pet be hospitalized. And this probably is directed more towards veterinarians than it is for pet owners. But as pet owners, you need to be the advocates for your pets. And so these are going to be some just sort of basic guidelines for this type of thing. Obviously, it's going to be on a case by case basis. It'll also depend on the pet owner. It depends on the veterinarian. So there's going to be some what would you say subjectivity here to this. But anyway, let's go through some rules here for it. So in no particular order, if your pet has a fever, then ideally they would be hospitalized until the fever is resolved. Now, fever is tricky because you can have mild fever, severe fever. Some pets are really sick with a mild fever. Some are really sick with severe with some are not sick that badly with severe fevers. It depends on the biology of the pet. Some pets normally run a little high on their thermometers, and in which case, even though it's a fever in another pet, for that pet, it's actually fine. But ideally, you would like to have your pet hospitalized until that fever is resolved. The main reason for that, unlike in people who might have fevers but still be at home, is that most pet owners, the majority, are not checking the pet's temperature at home, so they can't monitor it, and the pet can't speak for themselves. So, unless you are a pet owner that can reliably measure the pet's body temperature, meaning that your pet is tolerant of it, you have the devices to do so, you have the time to do so. And then, of course, you have access to veterinary care when temperature seems abnormal to you or you're not sure, then most people are not going to do that. And so that's why you want your pet in the hospital to have a fever until the fever is resolved. Second reason to stay in the hospital, not eating, not drinking, vomiting, diarrhea, give or take, but at least those three things: not eating, not drinking, and vomiting. You want to keep your pet in the hospital until those things are resolved. Now, again, there's many scenarios where a pet is kept home on palliative care until they're either better or if they continue to get worse and they get hospitalized. But in general, ideally, you want your pet to be eating and drinking and not vomiting before they leave the hospital. That's ideal. And it may be a scenario where your pet was admitted to the hospital for those symptoms, or it may be this scenario where the pet now has those symptoms after being in the hospital or while they're in the hospital. Maybe your dog got neutered and now is vomiting after surgery, under the care of the hospital or shortly after going home. But at any rate, you want your pets to be eating, drinking, and not vomiting before they are transitioned back over to home care. This, of course, depends, right? There are some pets who are very sick with mild vomiting and not eating. There are some that feel fine, even though they're just constantly vomiting every hour, every few minutes, or whatever. And so it depends on the case, of course. It depends on the pet owner, what they want to do. It depends on the veterinarian. But in general, you want your pet to be hospitalized if those things are happening. Third is pain, and usually pain that's not able to be managed with standard analgesics or anti-inflammatories. Because if your pet is under pain, and presuming that the source of that pain is not a reason in itself to be hospitalized, and your pet is not responding to typical analgesia methodologies, then you need injectable analgesia, which of course is not an option at home. So your pet gets hospitalized until the pain goes away. It's going to be a bit tricky because there are some conditions that cause pain, like let's say, for example, a broken tail that is not life-threatening, but that can cause really bad pain, and it'll take at least 6 to 8 weeks, if not longer, for that tail fracture to heal. And of course, you can't have your pet in the hospital for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks on IVs. It's just not cost prohibitive. It's not realistic. Rather, it's cost prohibitive and it's not realistic. So there are some scenarios where eventually you'll have to say, your pet has to go home on these pain meds, and just we have to deal with the fact that it sucks having a broken tail. It's like a person who sprained their ankle. Yeah, you're in pain, but you understand that you're in pain, and you're not going to die from it, and it's going to take time, and it'll get better. We have a heightened response to animals because they don't complain like we do, meaning that they can't make other people aware of it, is what I'm saying. And also, they don't understand that this pain may be self-limiting. They're thinking life and death. They're thinking flight or fight, the stress response, and so it's not as it's mentally or emotionally, it's not as acceptable for us to say for the pet, get over it, you'll be fine, just give it time. But we as people, because we know better, and because these animals are under our care, we know that a tough love, they'll tough it out and get better. But in the beginning parts of pain that's not controllable with your standard measures, yeah, your pet should be hospitalized, and ideally hospitalized until that pain has gone away. There's also a problem where pain can be very hard to detect in animals. They are evolutionarily trained to not show pain, not show weakness. And so some of them are very good at hiding it, especially your more stoic dogs or cats are good at hiding it. And so you may need the expertise of a veterinarian who will evaluate your pet to determine whether or not pain is still there and how it's being managed. So, you could have a pet at home that doesn't seem to be in really bad pain, is being treated for pain, but is still showing symptoms of pain that the pet owner is not appreciating. Next reason to hospitalize: lack of urination. Now, lack of urination means that your pet is trying to urinate, and he or she's unsuccessful, or she's not really trying to urinate, but you can't find urine anywhere in the house, and it's been going on 6 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 24 hours. The inability to urinate is almost always a life-threatening situation. Now, I specify no urination because there are some pets who appear to not urinate at home, but they actually are just they're still dripping urine. They have signs of cystitis, which is inflammation of the urinary bladder, and they feel the urge to continue to keep trying to urinate even though their bladder is empty. Anybody out there who's listening to this or watching this who have had a urinary tract infection in the past can speak to this as well. It's very, very irritating, and you feel like you have to go all the time. You have urgency to go, and yet you're barely producing any drops. But when I say lack of urination, I mean there's no urine coming out. That's a life-threatening emergency in the vast majority of cases, and you want your pet to be in the hospital until they are urinating adequate amounts again. And of course, that depends on the pet owner, depends on the vet, depends on what the pet's diagnosis is. Is the reason for the lack of urination curable or not? Because if you're talking about a dog that's an end-stage kidney failure, they have a lot more going on than only lack of urination, and it may not be a reversible condition, even if you have unlimited funds. So so there's that lack of urination, and then finally seizures. So here we go. Let's see.